Rabbi Say, welcome back to Yerushalmi Eruvin. We are Peksheni Alach Aleph. Now we're talking about how they used to do mechitzas around a well to allow the animals to get water from the well on Shabbos. So Oisim Pasin Liberais. They would put boards of wood around the wells. These are wells in the street or in a karmelis. So you wanted to turn the area into a rishus hayachid, and through that you'll be able to get water from the wells on Shabbos and leave your animals there to start drinking the water. Now these boards, so this is like special allowance. So these boards that you make are bar diumdin. Now diumdin is the Greek word duo. There's obviously two of something. Really it's an L-shaped board. Yeah, the board with a right angle in it. So it's got two sides. That's why it's called diumdin, like two sides. And basically it's an L shape. So if you have four L shapes around the well, now, although each L shape is made of two, so if you have four of them, you end up with 8 boards, as it were. So Abad Yumdin, Nirin Kishmaina, it looks like 8, because each one is made out of 2. Divrei Rabbi Huda, that's the view of Rabbi Huda. Rabbi Meir, he says, Shmaina, Nirin Kishne Masa. You do 8, which appear like 12. That means you have Abad Yumdin, 4 L shapes in the 4 corners, and 4 straight pieces, Abad Pishutin, and 4 more straight pieces between the L shapes. So one in the middle of each side. So you have 4 on the 4 corners of the L shapes and 1 in the middle of each side, and that makes 12 altogether. Goivhan, Asar Tvachim, the height of these needs to be at least 10 Tvachim, Barachvan Shisha and 6 Tvachim wide, but Avyan Koshul, the thickness, any amount. Ubeinei and Kimlai, and between them, leave a gap. Kimlai Shtebra Bokas Shal Shloisha Shalish Baka. Leave a gap for 2 lots of 3 cattle. It's called a semed, it's like this lot of 3 cattle. So each semed is 3 animals. So leave a gap for 2 lots of 3 cattle. Divrei Rameh. Rabbi Yehuda said the gap can be even 2 arba. So each one has got 2 lots of 4 animals, right? And kashuras. Now it's measured when the animals are tied together, below mutaris, not when they're loose and there's more space. And the shear is measured as one goes in and one comes out. And there's a gap between them, and that way they can get in and get out one next to the other. Okay, just close the door if possible, please. So, you make these 4 L shapes appear like 8. Lefisha haporos. Now the Mishnah said you have to have 4 doubled over around, so each of the corners. Why is 1 not enough on each corner? Lefisha haporos Rabbalai made. The area which is open is much more than these boards which you have. Your space is much bigger than your little corners. So you need to have double L shapes or whatever in the corners. Have a loaf shut in, but not just straight pieces in each corner. So by a double shape, by the L shape, you have like mechis on 2 sides. Each one of the 4 sides has got 2 sides. And through that, we can treat it as a rishus hayachid. Yeah. Again, this is a takana. Look, everything is in the public domain. You want to get the animals. You only need a bucket to get water out, and other regalim as well, and so on. So this is the solution that was given, right? Now, why is it that you're carrying, even though the gap is much bigger than these little walls? Look, you can see it. The well there is telling you, look, there's a big gap. The whole purpose of this is to take water out of the well. The animals can get in there and drink from the water. So it's noticeable they only allow this for this purpose. From here we learn some of the laws of Mechitza and Rishus of Shabbos, how far they reach. Now if you just put 4 boards, like what we're allowing you here, but Makam Acher, elsewhere, if there's no well, and you just want to circle an area just by putting 4 boards, 4 L shapes, but Chazav Zarak, and then you throw something from the street into that area, Chayiv, you are liable because you have taken something from the street into private domain. So this is how far it goes. Even if there's no well, you've thrown something into a private domain, right? Sounds like it's treated as Rishus HaYachid. You throw from the street, you're Chayv ben HaTorah. Okay. Let's carry on. Amar of Yaisa, Now Rav Yosef said, now why do these boards need to be 6 wide, 6 tvachim? Usually mechitza helps. Usually the wall has to be more than the gap. Rabbi Laporos. They can, here, hey kartalov, you're lenient. She hey poros, Rabbi Aimed, you can have more gap than wall. And therefore, we've been lenient in that respect. But we've been a bit stricter in other things. Everywhere, usually, let's say the fourth side of a courtyard, usually the fourth side, you've got your courtyard, your alleys, whatever it is, your courtyard. On the fourth side, you make a board of 4 tvachim only, and that helps from mechitza. But can I say pas shel shisha tvachim? Here you make one of 6 tvachim, as we've learned. Now, the heter to take water from the well. Rav Yirmiyah v'Shem Rav, they only allowed it pasi barais, and only regalim bavad. Now, they only allowed it for also only for the people who are ole regel, but not for other people. Right now, Rav says they only allowed it. The Mishnah, his treatise Rishus Yachid for various people, not for all. Let's see. Rav Amin Amar, B'shas ole regalim, when there were ole regalim, they allowed everyone by putting these L shapes in place. So now there's no ole regalim, so therefore it's not permitted. Rav Yirmiyah v'Shem Rav by Yitzchak, he said no, they allowed it b'pnei ole regalim. They allowed it for the needs of ole regalim, and therefore they allowed it for everyone, even nowadays when there's no one ole regal. So let's see the various opinions then. Is it allowed nowadays or not? Rav Ezra, Kumei, Rabbana Masti. The Mishnah says it's allowed nowadays. Oisim pasin barais. You can do these things for these wells. And it sounds like this manazeh even nowadays. But now we've learned later on, Memalin, you can get water. This is actually a proof, actually, that it's allowed nowadays. You Memalin Mebaragola. There was a big well of water in the base of Mikdash. Begaga, they used a various wheel system with a bucket on it, B'Shabbos. And also Mibaragodo from the big well over there on Yom Tov, not on Shabbos. And the Gemara says, you could get it from that special well which came from the source of the depths of the water. Begalgo Yom Tov, on Yom Tov you could use it. And B'Shah, Sha'ali Somen Agoda, when they came back at the time of Ezra, they needed water. They camped there. And the Nevi'im said, right, you'll be allowed to take water from this cold well on Yom Tov with this wheel system. They allowed it forever. Like the wells, they didn't allow all of them. That one that they camped next to. Just like we see over there, Mashu Huta, what was allowed on Yom Tov for the Ola Gola Huta was permitted forever. But same thing with these L shapes. Masha Huta, whatever was permitted is permitted for everyone, even if the Ola Regalim are no longer there. Rav Abdima da Chayfa, he passed in Bechayfa, Rav Yirmiyah, Bechelev, he passed in Bechelev, Bepasi Berois, Bisman Hazeh, he allowed it nowadays. So they explain that they allowed it even Bisman Hazeh, but there's no Ola Regalim, from this Ayrakah, because of this well. Others learned the rayas from the end of the brisa. They didn't allow all other wells, only from that particular one where they camped. So what was permitted? So it comes out, we're bringing a raya to forbid it nowadays. There's no Ola Regalim nowadays, right? It's not brought in Shulchan Aruch, by the way, this din, from what I remember. So it's not taken on. The Bavli says Pasi Barais was only Ola Regalim, but everyone else is forbidden. Some Rishonim learn that some Rishonim learn Dvar Mitzvah is also, if you're going for a Dvar Mitzvah, so even according to the Bavli, it's still allowed. The Rif and the Rambam and the Rosh, it was only Ola Regalim. And the Shulchan Aruch does not mention this heter at all, and it doesn't apply nowadays. But there are enough geminas with Pasi Barais Bisman Hazeh as far as the mitzvah of Sukkah, there might be some relevance. Okay, let's carry on. Now, according to Yehuda and our Mishnah, we surround the thing with the 4 diumdin and the 4 corners, and you also have shutin according to Rameh. You have some straight pieces as well. Abba once said, Rameh Yoda, Rabbi Yehuda would agree to Yehuda that you don't have to have the straight pieces when the gap between is 10 amas or less. And if it's more than 10 amas, you lengthen the diumdin So the gap between is just 10 amas. So you don't need the straight pieces. If the gap's not too big, you don't need the straight pieces. But Rabbi Yehuda won't agree that by adding these other things, it will help to reduce the gaps. So if it's more than the shear, which is permitted, he'll say you have to lengthen the L shapes. It's no good enough just to put extra boards in the middle. The other one says no. Rabbi Yehuda, he might agree to Rabbi Yehuda, yes, you can reduce the gap between the Diyumdin by lengthening them, but Rabbi Islay will say Rabbi holds Diyumdin Pshutin. You need maybe the L shapes and the straight pieces. You want to say that maybe the L shapes are enough? Why are the L shapes enough? He says you need both. So the thing was this, well, I'll explain to you why we can make the gap less between the Diyumdin through these straight pieces and not by lengthening the L shapes. Because Diyumdin, by reducing the gap, by lengthening the L's, and you don't put the plain pieces, a person might think that the din is always like this. 4 Diyumdin is enough to make Rosh Yachid, even though there's no well. Harav YCD Cohen, and he'll end up putting 4 L shapes around a space, but elsewhere where there's no well, and he'll be liable on moving something 4 amas from in this area. Therefore, when there's a need to reduce the space, Rameh requires you to put an extra plain piece in the middle, right? And through that is noticeable, it's only permitted for wells. It's not permitted anywhere else. Rav Achashem Rav Chidna, he says, Rameh doesn't agree to Yehuda, that instead of putting pshutin, you can lengthen the L's. He doesn't allow that. Rabbi Yehuda does not agree to Rameh, that you can be machshir it by having plain pieces between the L shapes. No, according to Yehuda, if the gap is too big, you have to lengthen the L shape. Even though Rabbi Yosef didn't say that Rebbe was his teacher, my teacher didn't say this. Hadar Melsa, this matter that Rameh doesn't agree to Yehuda, that lengthening the L's, the Diyumdin helps. He didn't say it clearly, but he said something similar. He said the following: Rabbi Bun, there were 2 of my rhyme. That's Pur of Zero. How long, how much must be the distance between the Diyumad and that plain piece which is next to it? So it won't be considered a continuation of the Diyumad. We want it to be a piece in its own right. You see this plain piece. So how far away must it be from the Diyumad so it's considered significant in its own right? He said to them, if the gap between them is pachas mishlesh less than 3, then it's considered closed up. It's just a diyumad which has been lengthened. Then kasaso. Therefore, it's considered continuation of the diyumad. It's not a piece in its own right, and you have to put another piece there. But if the gap between the diyumad and the plain piece is yaisim mishisha, more than 6, huflag, then it's considered completely separate, and it's not considered a continuation of the diyumad of the corner piece. You follow? So if it's more than 6 away, then definitely it's significant and it's its own right. Okay? If it's too close, it's a problem. Okay. So a 6, we know usually these boards have to be 6 tvachim. So it's got to be that distance from the diyumad, and it's not considered part of it. This question we're dealing, if the distance is mishleisha badju, what about it's between 3 and 6? Now what? Is it considered continuation of the diyumad piece, or is it in its own right? In Tame, if you're going to tell me that Rameh Yehuda, that we can reduce the gap between the diyumdin by lengthening them, and you don't have a plain piece there, then I don't care how distant it has to be between the plain piece and the diyumad. But Yasiki diyumad aruch, let it just be one extension of the diyumad of the corner piece. It'll be like a long one, because it's close to the diyumad. You won't need a separate board there. You won't need to have another board. You can just reduce the gap by lengthening the corner pieces. You don't have to add another plain piece. The fact that Rabbi Yosef brings this in about the distance between the plain piece and the corner piece, he must hold that according to Rameh, you reduce the gap only by adding an extra piece, not by lengthening the diyumdin. Now the Gemara brings it on by who holds like Bnei Yeshiva, that even according to Rameh, you can reduce the gap through lengthening the diyumdin. You don't have to have a plain piece there. You know what? Rameh doesn't need an extra plain piece in the middle. Yeah, Ela b'shitas Rabbi Yehuda. It's only according to Rabbi Yehuda. So according to Meir, the gaps between these corner pieces can be till 10 amos. If it's bigger, then you can lengthen the L shape, lengthen the corners, don't add another piece. Now Rameir says put a straight flat piece in the middle. That's according to Rabbi Yehuda. He allows a gap until 13 amas and a third. Rabbi Yehuda holds if the gap between Diyumdin is more than 13 and a third, then you have to reduce it by lengthening the Diyumdin. But Rameir said, even if we were going to allow a gap of 13 and a third, like Rabbi Yehuda, when it's more than that shear, you have to reduce it by putting a pus. You have to have a plain board in there. You can't just lengthen the Diyumdin. Rabbi Yosef said, Rameir always requires pasim which are straight, the straight pieces. Even if you put it according to his view, not just Rabbi Yehuda's view, according to his view, and the gap is not more than 10. Even though the gap is the Diyumdin are right, at the end of the day, I'm afraid the walls are not bigger than the gaps, right? They're not more covering than the gaps between. Since you don't have more wall than gap, you need to add an additional piece between the Diyumdin to allow the whole setup. Right, we bring a brisa about the Diyumdin. Let's say, now what can be a Diyumdin? Now a Diyumdin, we said, it's a piece, an L-shaped board. But what happens if it's a big stone? Can we virtually cut out the stone and make an L-shaped board out of a stone? Any offers? Let's see. You had a big stone at one of the corners. Ryan, we can imagine virtually, if we broke down this stone, and you can have a piece of stone that six one way and six the other way, yeah, like a raised shape, yeah, this L shape, then we can treat the stone as our Diyumad, Nid and Mishum Diyumad. Some say, if you could sort of carve it out, and you will have six one way and six the other way, it's considered a Diyumad. Have a boiman, the one to say, Mando, the one who said Shim Techakek, if you could carve out the stone. Moeded, he measures the six, mibifnim, from the innermost part of the Diyumad, which is in this stone after you've carved it out. It's like the innermost part of the stone is probably the biggest part of the stone, right? So you carve out a 6 by 6 from the innermost part. Madam, the one who said Shim Techalek, now someone had a different girsa, Shim Techalek. Now we said if you divide it. So they are learning, Moeded mi bachutz. They say you can measure the 6 from the outside of the Diyumad, which is in the stone after it's sort of broken open. So how are we saying this? Shim Techalek. Mibachutz, it seems from the outside of the Diyumad, which is in the stone after you divide it. Maybe it's more outer piece, is that how we're learning? Shim Techakek holds the stone has to be the Diyumad, as if it's divided from the outside and carved inside until you have a shape of a reish of this Diyumad. So he says here, the difference between Techalek and Techakek, do we look only on the outer side of the Diyumad, as if it's open and uncovered, or we look at the inner side of the Diyumad as if it's open through scratching away? He says at the end of the day, we don't do anything to this stone. So the Gemara is saying, what's enough committed if we look at it this way or that way? We don't actually touch the stone at all. So they wanted to say, maybe how you measure the 6 tvachim. Do we say it's like nechlekes, like the outer part is uncovered? Then you need 6 tvachim each side on the outer side of this piece. But if we're looking at the stone as if it's nachkekes, and it's only uncovered from the inside as well, then you need a shel 6 tvachim even on the inner part of it. He says that the nafkamina is if it will be split and scratched out on each side towards the outside 6 tvachim exactly, and the inner side will be lacking a bit of shil. So it seems the idea of we're looking at the outer part of it, the inner part of it, depending if we're dividing it up or carving it out. That seems to be what we get from that. Okay. Oh, Rabbi Yosef, yeah. Rabbi Yosef said, no, that's not right. He says, even if you're going to look at the stone when it's carved out, until you've got like a very thin layer, which is only like a garlic skin, you're going to say it's kosher to be a diumad. There's no share for how thick that it has to be. There's no difference to Maisa, measure it on the inside, measure it on the outside. What difference is that? Now, Ben Commander Omar, there's another difference, one way to explain the difference between the two girsais. Ben Commander Omar Shim Techalek. Whether you say you sort of divide it up, Ben Commander Omar Shim Techakek, or you sort of split it open. Moeded, you measure the 6 tvachim bibifnim. You can measure the share from the inner side. No nafkamina, you measure from the inside to the outside. But Manda Omar Shim Techakek, the one who says about carving it out, is Ba'agula. It's like a stone which is round. It's all round, and you make a square inside it. You look at it only by carving it and dividing it. Manda Mashim Techalek, the one who says you're sort of dividing it up, that is Berumu Bas, where it's sort of square, and you can see the diumad is already just through nechlek, like being divided, but you don't have to carve it up as well. Here they've got a picture of like a big tree stump, which is all round, or stone, which is round, and there's a square bit at the top carved into it, and then you've got like a pillar where the stone is straight as a square all the way up. I don't know. Look, I'll tell you the difference between the various girsais. There's a Tanu who learned techalek, right, sort of dividing out, and he told his friend who learned the word techalek, like carving it out. He says, "Ain bein debrai levracha." At the end of the day, between my girsa and your girsa, there's nothing between us. You're talking about a stone which is round, and you make a square inside it. But I'm talking about a square stone. Okay. If you had in one of the corners charutz amuk hasara, so you haven't got an L shape above the ground, but you've got a ditch in the ground. You've got a cleft in the ground. You've got a little cleft in the ground, 6 by 6. So down below ground level. So charetz amuk hasara, beracham above 4 tvachim wide, v'yesh bo shisha lekav 6 this way, 6 that way. Nidan v'shum diumad. That also can be a diumad, right? They're 10 tvachim deep. It's treated as a mechitza. Okay? Loisav dava, not only charetz. This groove in the ground is called diumad. And afilu gav shushis, you got a hill 10 tvachim high can be a diumad. Now even miksasai charetz, miksasai gav shushis, some of it is a hill and some of it is a gap in the ground. That's also okay. Hayu chamisha kanim. If in one of the corners you had like 5 sticks, right, upright, which are like in the shape of a diumad, you have 5 sticks making this L shape. You don't have 3 tvachim between them, but yesh v'han, and they produce shisha l'kan, 6 this way, 6 that way. Nidayin mishum diumad, we treat that as a diumad. Now, if in one of the corners you had shloisha, 3 upright sticks in a ray shape, and they carry on 6 to one way and 6 to the other way, but kasha gemi melmalon, and you sort of tie a string across the top. So you've got maybe 3 sticks, one here, one at the corner, one to the side, and you tie a string on top, right? Can that help? Because it looks like a Suras Pesach now. Now, Klum Pe'emat says, wait a minute, Suras Pesach helps to be a mechitza, Ashtei Muchachas because of Nadal, where it's got to be surrounding an area from all sides. 1 second. It's a question. Ashtei Muchachas because of Nadal. Do you think it needs? Are you telling me it only helps when it's not going to be surrounding from all sides? So it's Suras Pesach, an Aman here, an Aman here. No, what's he saying here? 1 minute. Klum Pe'emat says, does it help as a mechitza? When it's not part of walls surrounding from all sides? Does it need to be surrounding all sides? No, it doesn't. Therefore, I'm here. No, 1 second. It can't commit. 1 minute. Let me see it once more. Klum Pe'emat says, do you honestly think that Suras Pesach will help as mechitza? When it's not part of mechitza surrounding from all sides? I don't say that. So Suras Pesach goes Amma here, Amma there. It hasn't surrounded the whole area. It can't really be a diumad. see the notes on this. He says it's a mechitza if it's part of a whole circumference of something. So here they've got a little square shape in the corner. You see that? You've got 4 poles and you've got a little line going all the way around. So it's part of an enclosed block shape. Tzuras Pesach, which doesn't surround an area, is not called a mechitza. So here, like 2 Tzuras Pesach not surrounding everything, they're like a ray shape, one of the sides. So there's not really got Shem mechitza. It's not kosher to be a diumad, but it's not really surrounding an area. That's what he wants to say. Ela behenda aglin. We're talking about a stick with a rope on top, which is surrounding an area. Ukasasamu, that area is considered closed. It's surrounded with mechitzas of Tzuras Pesach. So the suffix is where the sticks with the rope are at least surrounding one of the corners of this area around the well, as it were. That's what he wants to say here. He says here, so it's at least, so if it's just here and here, and one line on top, 3 sticks, that's no good. But maybe if it's 1, 2, 3, 4, so there's a little square, so it's surrounding a little area, you see, maybe that's where it will help. That's what he wants to say here. There's 4 Tzuras Pesach surrounding an area from all sides. It gives it a name mechitza. So the question is that kosher for a diumad or not? Okay. That which we say, as far as the stone, they could be one of the pasin for the well. If you divide it up, 6 on this side, 6 on that side. It can be your L shape, your diumad. We say the same thing with sticks that make a hekef of the Tzuras Pesach. Since they surround an area of 6 by 6 tvachim, we should treat it as a diumad, which has got 6 tvachim on 2 sides, and there's no question about it. It should help. Then the Gemara says there's a difference between the cases. Tamam. Now with a stone, you divide it. You only need a thin layer, the outer thin layer. That's good enough. And you can say that's like kosher as a diumad. But here, part of the Tzuras Pesach, ma'izlach, what are you going to have if you divide the area which is surrounded to a shape of a diumad? If you're going to say we look at the surrounded areas, if it's divided into a diumad, then bitalta hilchos peah. Basically, you've got rid of the whole laws of Tzuras Pesach. They're not surrounding an area on 4 sides. If you sort of break it up and you just have 2, one here and then one there, but it's not, it's not surrounding an area of 4 sides. So maybe it's not going to help. So bitalta hilchos peah, since it's not surrounding a set area from all sides, so whether Tzuras Pesach surrounding, whether that helps as diumad, is not so straightforward. He says here, look, if the area surrounded with Tzuras Pesach could be divided into a reish, then what's left wasn't a complete circumference. The other sticks which are left are not got Tzuras Pesach anymore. Tzuras Pesach is mechitza when it's part of a whole circumference. So surroundings, which is made from Tzuras Pesach, you have to look at it as it is. You can't look as if it's divided into a reish. Right? We need a whole area surrounding a whole area. We can't just break it up and say, we've got a reish here. We need that whole area all the way around. Now, if you've got a wall or a tree, some sort of branches which are 6 tvachim on each side, that can be a diomid. If they grew of their own accord, you can carry with them only if they're surrounding an area because they grew out base of time until a base of time area. But also biyad, if however someone grew them with his hands, they should be a diumad when you're allowed to use them. Even an area base core, even 2 base 2 koraim. Now, if you have a big well, lechetzia, so half of it, also you made these pasin around it. Well, lechetzia now is sticking out of your area. Half of the well is outside your L shape. You hear that? It's sticking out into outside. Lechetzia le'asa. So lechetzia she'asa, that area that you did cover it, surround it, then mutter, you can get water from it. Lechetzia she'le'asa, the area sticking out that you didn't make, then also it is forbidden. If you have 2 wells, so 2 wells are within their little squares, right? and you have a third one in between. So you have two squares, the L shapes, and then you have a third one in the middle. So what is the din? Can the middle well, can it be surrounded by pasi baros, by these sticks, by these L shapes, by the outer ones of the two wells on its side? Right? So it's got one here, one there, and you've got a well in the middle. Can it be? What's this question? Two people are getting water from the two wells on either side, each one from his own well. So therefore, are they now allowing him to take water from the middle well? I mean, if one was taking from all the wells, then the middle one, can be considered surrounded by pasim of the two wells on the side, and you're allowed to draw water from it on Shabbos. Now, Chadzer, Shehi Pesucha Lepasim, you have a courtyard. Here's your courtyard. It leads into an area surrounded by the L shapes. Chadzer Shibchus Lepasim, you're allowed to carry from the courtyard into the boards, right? And from the boards, the area into the courtyard. Now, if you have two courtyards coming in, two alleys coming in into this well area, also you can't carry between the chatzeros and the pasuk baros. So the two courtyards are leading into this pasuk baros. You can't carry there. Why? Between the courtyard and the pasuk baros. Not only is forbidden two, even one courtyard with two houses which are opening to this area of the wells, you cannot carry between the houses and the area of the well area. Sovereign Meva, they wanted to say it's also where the two courtyards didn't join up. If they joined up, it'll be fine. Now, even if the two courtyards join together, also they cannot carry between the courtyard and the well area. It doesn't make it like one courtyard. Now, Rav Chuna, like his opinion elsewhere, this Palgun got machlekes chachamim with a mavoi. Shetzidei echad, on the one side of it, there's a guy, right? You've got an alleyway here. You've got one courtyard on this side with, let's say, 3 Jewish people living there. You've got one courtyard on the other side with a non-Jewish person living there. So what have we got here? So mavoi shetzidei echad guy, the tzidei echad Yisrael. So one side of the courtyard, of the alley, is a courtyard of the guy. One side of the courtyard is an alley with Jewish people. He said, even if the Jewish people got together, there's a little alley between them, through their doorways, the guy forbids them to carry between their homes and the mavoi, because since they are not considered like living in, they're not considered through the Eruvs if they're living in one house. Said, even if they joined up, they made an Eruv through the windows. No, the guy does not forbid them to carry between their houses and the mavoi. They're considered like living in one house together. Right? For a guy, a mavoi where a guy lives, Rav Chuna holds an Eruv doesn't help to let all the Jewish people like living in one house. So he also holds with two courtyards which are open to pasei barais, open to the well. The Eruv doesn't help to consider them as living in one courtyard to allow you to carry between the courtyard and the well. Now the one brings another pshat, according to Rav Chuna, about the two courtyards opening to the area of the well, and it's not connected to his view with a mavoi through the guy. Even you're going to say, Rav Chuna Rav Yochanan Tamam. Rav Chuna is like Rav Yochanan, where a mavoi with a guy that muta, you can carry from the courtyard to the mavoi if the Jewish people made an Eruv together. But Maidu Uhachi, he would agree here with two courtyards which are open to the well, Shu also, you cannot carry between the two courtyards leading into the well, even if they made an Eruv together, because Hacha, here we have to worry, Shema Lemacha, maybe tomorrow, Techrav Abeh, the well will dry up. Afu Savalem, and he'll think, Shema Eruv Mail, an Eruv helps to join two courtyards which are open together only per passive brois with these little L shapes. And you think, I can join two courtyards with L shapes. And you think that's good enough, even though the well is dried up. And the truth is, Ein Moel Eruv, and Eruv does not help to join the two courtyards per passive brois with these little L shapes. and that doesn't help to make an Eruv for 2 courtyards with a few L shapes. Okay? Amar Rav Yossi. Rav Yossi Rabbi Bun. Lo yitiru, they did not allow you to carry Shabbos in a closed area, Pasi Barais, with these wells, only to get water out of the well. If it was dry when Shabbos came in, water came on Shabbos, I'm afraid when Shabbos came in, there was no water there, so it's a problem. If, let's say, beginning of Shabbos there was water, then it stopped. When Shabbos came in, it was fine. Now, between these boards, these L shapes, can you carry between them? Yeah? Neimash, we say, between the outer area of the pasim and the inner area, if there's less than 4 tvachim bottom, so if they're 4 tvachim wide, if it's less than 4 tvachim wide, then the area corresponding to that, parallel to that, is kiskupa. It's like this sort of porch in the front, which is it's forbidden. If it's less than 4 tvachim, then it's kiskupa, then it's like sort of the threshold of the house, which is muteres, which is permitted. And therefore, muter lakan, you're allowed to carry from there to here, to the Rishus Yachid in the house, within the surrounded area, or muter lakan, and you're allowed to carry from there to the street, which is outside. If you cannot use it as a changing point intentionally to carry from the street to the house by stopping at that L shape. Now we've learned that according to in the Mishnah, the gap which is permitted between the pasim is until you need a gap of 2 lots of 3 cattle, right? Each one has got 3 animals. According to Yehuda, it was a gap of 2 lots of 4 cattle. Now we bring a brisa now, looks at the measures. Tani Yeshon Ke'esa Amos. We've learned the gap between them should be between the pasim 10 amos, Divrei Meir, and Rabbi Yehuda, he says, it'll be 13 or 14, between 13 and 14. Now, the width of a cow, how much is the width of a cow? He says, Para Amo Mechsa, a cow is 1.5. So the gap between the cows of the 2 smolim will be 9 amos. So if there's 6 of them, it's 6 times 1.5, which is 9. Now, Amma be 9. And you have another amma gap between the 2 lots of 3. So the gap between them, therefore, is 10 amos. Okay, to be continued, Rabbi Sai.